Here is everything you need to know about the Clarity Act and what it means for cryptocurrency. So the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act of 2025, that's the full title. The whole point is just bringing what we call regulatory clarity to the digital asset space, primarily for cryptocurrencies and other tokens. And then, of course, we need to answer the question, who actually regulates these things? Who is in charge of enforcing the law? Because right now it's more than one agency, which leads to a lot of confusion. The nice part is not that we would be getting regulation for the first time, but that we would be clearing up the patchwork of nonsense that is currently regulating the space. Because I would actually go so far as to say that the current issue that we face as an industry is not the lack of regulation, but, as the name implies, the clarity around it. We have a ton of rules that govern crypto. They don't make very much sense. So we need to clear up some definitions around things like digital asset, digital commodity, mature blockchain. That mature thing, by the way, was the subject of a little piece of misinformation. So like just for reference, a memo was published outside of this act. It's not in the law itself, that identified several mature blockchain ecosystems. You might see this circulating around. It's not in the actual act, okay? It's a separate memo. Anyway, what we're doing with this particular piece of legislation is splitting up digital assets into several categories: securities, commodities, and stablecoins. As far as who gets to regulate what, this splits responsibility between the SEC and the CFTC. With the Clarity Act in place, the SEC would retain jurisdiction or oversight or authority over things presented as investment contracts or securities. The CFTC would gain oversight for commodities stuff, like spot trading, for example. The difference here would be a token that was offered as part of some sort of initial sale, like an ICO or an IPO for a company, the equivalent here in crypto, or something being traded for spot after the fact. So the difference between buying Ethereum when it was initially offered versus trading it years later on an exchange. There is also a provision, which is why this memo got so much attention, where the CFTC would be treating things as commodities differently if they are from mature or properly decentralized ecosystems, and there's some ambiguity there over what constitutes a blockchain to be labeled as mature. It's not perfect. There's got to be some wiggle room because, of course, there's a lot of nuance with stuff like this, but there could be joint oversight between something that like mixes commodities and securities, like payment stablecoins, for example. There's an acknowledgement here, which I find very important, though, to say that some assets can start as a security and transition to commodity depending on how they're offered. This really has to do with the way that a token is initially offered to people for sale, with like the implication that it could be an investment, and have it not